Peace, family. It's your boy JGiddins, the father. As usual, remember to be positive, optimistic. Keep positive people in your circle. I took the liberty of clipping up a few clips from the AI and white-collar jobs meeting that took place on January 24th at the World Economic Forum, where they basically described to you that there'll be no more jobs. I recommend y'all listen.
I'm joined by just an incredible panel. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Ina Fried, Chief Technology Correspondent at Axios. What I thought to do instead of waste any of our precious time on introductions is just have everyone instead sort of talk about, when we talk about AI and jobs, how do you come at this? What are the first few things that come to mind for you, and that can serve as both an introduction and a starting point for our discussion. So I'd love to start to my left, Lauren.
Thanks. From two different ways. One, frankly, just having spent a long time working in nonprofits and education and policy and humanitarian response, I worry about the disruption that is potentially coming and whether or not we are training folks to be successful in the next generation. But the transition periods I always worry about, and are we preparing government, society, community to do that, and are we prepared to help support people through that transition? The other thing I think about a lot is, in the sector in which I work, are we actually helping the organizations that make communities thrive? Are we helping them think about how their work is going to be disrupted and how we deploy these tools against those problems? Because they could be incredibly powerful and incredibly impactful in helping us make progress.
And Mihir, your company kind of bridges two of the areas. When we first started talking about AI, automation, we thought, it was everyone else's jobs they were coming from. And all the folks in this room, we were like, automation's wonderful. It's going to make my company better. And then all of a sudden we realized, oh, it's, AI is coming for our jobs too, in one sense. Talk about, you're kind of leading the charge on that front. Talk about what you're doing and what your company does and some of the things that AI is already doing.
Thank you. So if you think about the world, there are about 1 billion knowledge workers. These are the people who are sitting in front of computers, either processing mortgage applications or healthcare claims or supply chain requests. All of us who sit, a considerable amount of time in front of a computer doing our job. And the way many of us do that job is we get the data from emails and everywhere else, and then we have about 18,000 different applications. We input stuff and make some decisions along the way. All of this was not possible to automate because it's just a huge universe of 18,000 applications and too many variations. What has changed in the last many years is with the help of AI and robotic process automation, now software bots are able to operate all applications. They look at an application, there are forms and fills, and they can execute a process end to end. So a mortgage a mortgage application that used to take 30 days could now, you feed all the data, it will take all the data, make decisions, type it into all applications, and in 3 minutes you're done. So if you step back, about anywhere from 15 to 70% of all the work that we do in front of a computer could now be automated. Mm-hmm. It is truly a watershed moment that's happening.
One quick follow-up. For your customers, are they mostly reducing the number of workers they have doing those things, or are they finding new work for those same workers to do?
What is happening, that's a great question. What is happening is when you process mortgage application instead of 30 days in 4 minutes, you end up processing a lot more of it and you gain market share. So this is about doing more. The other thing I would point out is that out of 100 million processes that we run, we estimate about 20% of it is the things that we never did before, because either it was not technologically possible or economically not viable. In another 3 to 4 years, I estimate that to be 40%. That means 40% of the new things, there are new products, new services, better quality of service, better quality of life. We forget technology is not about doing things existing things better, cheaper, faster. It's about doing things that we never did before.
Great. And Eric, I know your work at Stanford, is all about sort of, human-centered AI and sort of what is the role. Help us, share. You and your colleagues are doing a ton of work. What should we know about this topic?
Sure. Well, first, but I agree very much with what Mihir and Lauren was saying. power. The deep learning revolution really set off all this interest in AI over the past decade or so. And now I believe we have a similarly important set of changes with generative AI and with some of what we call foundation models at Stanford. Andy McAfee and I have been talking about this exponential improvement in the technology and how our labor, our institutions, our skills, our organizations aren't keeping up, and there's a growing gap. I'm not sure exponential is the right metaphor anymore. I'm beginning to think it's more like punctuated equilibrium, because this is like a burst forward of capabilities. And they build on top of the other ones. It's not like the other ones have gone away. There's always a wave of concern and fear about job loss and whether or not there's going to be mass unemployment. In fact, unemployment is at a record low right now, and so it's not really eliminating tens of millions of jobs or anything. What it's doing is it's affecting job quality and changing the way that we do the work. One of the things that we're looking at Stanford, as Ina mentioned, is keeping humans in the loop, and the way that that can be done in a way that makes the work more fulfilling and maybe gets rid of some of the boring routine work of filling out invoices or whatever, and people can focus on some of the more interesting human-centered parts and connecting. That doesn't always happen, and I think that there's an opportunity there to use the technology in lots of different ways. And one of the things that'll be interesting to see over the next decade is to what extent we do keep humans in the loop and work on creating higher job quality and not simply looking at doing more of the same more cheaply or driving down wages. Either path is possible, but I think one of them most of us would like to see as the path we do going forward for the next decade.
You so the implication what you said is it's blue collar, right? Now, what about white collar? Because the real issue, I think, is how far this is going to go, how far up the value chain, the best way to put it.
And that's why I'm so glad you're on the panel, Martin, because your industry is actually the one that I think is going to be changed the most dramatically in the next couple of years, or one of the ones that's going to change first.
I wouldn't single out, you're going to spread a lot of fear out there by saying what you just...
Well, let me tell you some of what I know will be possible, and then I want to hear how you're already using it. So I know to...
This example, but I think the really most interesting area, and that's why I sort of picked you up on that question of white collar, blue collar, is I think the biggest impact actually is not going to be, it will be on the creative side of the business, but it will be in the data and analytics and digital media side of the business. So it's an $800 billion industry, the media industry, of which digital is currently 2/3, predicted to go to 3/4 by 2025. So media planning and buying, which is a process or set of processes which are algorithmically driven or lend themselves to algorithmic analysis, is an area which is very human driven. In fact, if you went back a few years ago, when the platforms started to develop, like Google and Meta and Amazon, the conventional wisdom was, and when I was running WPP, that we would be disintermediated by those platforms. It didn't happen. And the reason why was that Google's business was not in employing people, or Meta's business was not in employing people, and they didn't want to go into a service business because they were very labor efficient and capital intensive. That's the big change. Now you will be able to automate the media planning and buying process in a highly effective way. It's become more digital, which lends itself to it as well. And there are more permutations. You know, this morning you hear about Netflix, you've got Disney coming in, you've got Apple and Microsoft. It's going to be a very highly competitive area as well from a technology point of view. You've already got Microsoft in there. You've got Google, for example, here, talking about how their models now are even more sophisticated than you heard in the context of OpenAI. So my prediction would be that the media planning and buying business, which is the guts of the so-called holding company, profitability and base, will be disintermediated very significantly. It may take about 5 years. The people on the panel will know much better than I do how long this will take. It may take 5 to 7 years, but it's going to revolutionize. So you will not be dependent as a client on a 25-year-old media planner or buyer who has limited experience, but you'll be able to pull the data. That's the big change. And that's, I think, the real issue that everybody is focused on and worried about, because we might be displacing, mortgage applications or speeding up the process and creating better intellectual capacity for workers as a result. But the real issue is how far up the chain does it affect people at senior levels in agencies? And I think the answer is going to be it will.